Before I get started, though, I did have a couple of questions that were handed to me, just two questions that were handed to me from the morning session, one of which I think I addressed. Somebody asked about this website that I'm in the process of making. It's getting really, really close. All the privacy policies, disclaimers, all those legal things are done, and a lot of the articles are written, and getting a start on that. It's called You Are More, helping you to be more than your illness. And that's going to be a big theme of what I talk about in the next half hour to 45 minutes, is making sure you, and when I say you, I'm not just referring to the PSCers. This is probably even more important for caregivers, to make sure your life is more than the illness itself. The question about the website was, is this something that's focused on PSC or is it for other chronic illnesses? And the reason this is a separate organization that I'm developing is that it is for people with many different types of chronic illnesses. It's not just going to be about liver disease and PSC, PBC, but my goal is to serve people and provide mental health information, coping information, and living information for a variety of people with different types of chronic illnesses, as well as other types of sort of invisible disabilities. I mentioned earlier today, not many people, if my Social Security evaluators were watching me this morning doing my presentation, I wonder if they would have awarded me the disability benefits. I can fool people pretty well, and many of us can do that a lot of the time. And that is great in that it feels good to feel like ourselves at times, and it's also kind of a tough situation because people don't quite then get that there really is something going on. Well, there is something going on, but I want your life to be more than that illness or the itching or the fatigue or whatever might be happening. The other question I got, which I absolutely loved, I may be interpreting the question totally the wrong way, but I think it brings up an excellent point. Somebody asked, isn't encephalopathy just a complication of liver disease? I don't remember the exact wording. Isn't it just a biological product of the liver disease, and in some cases kidney disease also? Well, sure, yes it is. It is caused by that, but the biopsychosocial behavioral model is still crucial. And if you focus only on what causes something, you're not going to be living much of a life. Cause is irrelevant. And I'd like to use this example. If I am in a serious auto collision and I lose both of my legs, we know what the cause is. It's physiological, right? Or mechanical, I guess you would say. Legs have been taken off. That's purely physical. But okay, I need to go speak from that podium. Is that a physical illness? I need to get in the restroom, and the door, it's not wide enough for my chair to fit through. Yes, maybe it meets the 3-foot requirement. We added a new addition to our church building recently, and I was on the building committee. And I and a couple other people really wanted to focus on accessibility. The chair of our committee, however, focused on meeting ADA standards. As a result, what would have happened is the stalls for the restroom, for the toilets, would have been smaller than our existing restrooms, which people were complaining about didn't have enough room. If you had a large person in a wheelchair, my mother-in-law is a small person in a wheelchair, it was hard enough, that needed some assistance, and you needed 1 or 2 people to get in the restroom with them to transfer them onto the toilet, an ADA stall is still quite small. It's more than meeting those minimum standards. And so we might go somewhere where we're without legs, it's a physical cause, but we have to adapt to that environment. It's a sociological issue. It's a societal issue. It is also psychological. If I'm standing, you react to me very differently as a speaker than if I'm sitting. If my voice is affected and my entire speech is like this, I would have a different impact on you. And that's a reality. I would have a different relationship with myself if I suddenly didn't have legs. I would have to learn to, well, I'd probably have to buy a new house. I would have to interact with my children quite differently. It would affect my relationship with them. It would affect my driving ability, perhaps, although I could drive quite easily with the adaptive equipment. But that brings up financial concerns, again, sociological factors. Could I do the same type of work that I do? In my case, I probably could have done a lot of that same work. Many people could not. So there's physical causes. The encephalopathy is very similar. Yes, it's caused by the liver disease, by portal hypertension, and there are some ways we can deal with it. By managing our environment so that other people are aware of what our needs are. For instance, I direct a small choir at our church, and I have told them several times, and I've had some assistance with a few key people in the choir that are my friends that can help me with this. When I'm struggling, I can't tolerate interruptions. And when they start talking amongst themselves to clarify something in the music, I completely lose track of what's going on and how I can direct the music. So they have helped by adapting, by being quiet. They do that for me, and they keep it focused. And she'll whistle and say, I can't whistle loudly, sorry. But she will get them quiet so that one person is speaking at a time. Managing my environment so that I can tolerate it. Taking earplugs. I had a wonderful time. My 2 nephews were in from California, and they brought a friend, and my 3 kids, and we were playing, I can't remember, we were playing a fun apples to apples, if you're familiar with that game. Wonderful time, but it was too much simulation. One of the things for me, very, very mild encephalopathy causes me to be overwhelmed by different environmental things going on, and noise is one of those for me. So I put my earplugs in very lightly, and then I could tolerate being around them. If I had not done that, I probably would have gotten to the point where I started yelling at them, where I started belittling them, and that's not who I am. So there are things that can be done even though there's a biological cause. And that's why that biopsychosocial behavioral model is so important. It's to take into account all of those variables so that we can find ways to cope effectively. One of the most important things that we can talk about is how in the world do you describe living with illness to somebody who just doesn't get it? Very few people will get it. Now, many of you may be asymptomatic and may have many years of being asymptomatic, but if you are symptomatic or when you are symptomatic, being able to communicate what that's like is very powerful. And there was a woman, Christine Miserandino, I think is something like she pronounces her name, who talks about the spoon theory. How many of you have heard of the spoon theory? Great, great. If you haven't, go to her website. And when you get this, the PowerPoint presentation, click on that, and it might be, but you don't look sick.com. There you go. I think I have that spelled out somewhere in there. She tried to find a way to explain this when a friend of hers, a close friend who had gone to lots of medical appointments with her, who had been living with the illness with her, said, "What's it like to have lupus?" Christine was kind of shocked. "What do you mean? You're at all my medical appointments. You've heard me describe all the symptoms." She said, No, not the symptoms. What is it like day to day to go through your life and have this illness? And so she went around to the tables and gathered up various spoons. She gathered a dozen spoons or so. It may have been more or less, I don't know exactly. She said, "Okay, let's let these represent the energy that we have for different tasks that we have during the day." And she gave her friend the spoon. "Okay, each time you do something, it costs you a spoon. It costs you some energy. And you have to plan your day out in accordance with that. So what's the first thing you do?" Friend thinks, well, I guess, I drive to work. Well, wait a minute. You have to take a shower? Do you take a shower? Are you going to comb your hair today? Or wash your hair? Washing your hair, if you have lupus, especially if it's very active, uses a lot more energy than keeping your arms low. Okay, well, let me see. A spoon because I needed to take a shower. A spoon for washing my hair. Okay? I had to make meals for my children. 2 spoons for their lunches. Okay, do I drive to work or get a ride? I got a ride. That saved me a spoon. Maybe, depends. You planned on it saving a spoon, but your friend who picked you up won't be quiet and keeps talking about things and asking you questions and asking you to participate. Okay. How many spoons are left? Okay, I have 6 spoons, and I haven't even gotten to work yet. So you can see where that is headed, right? You have to plan out your spoons very carefully for faculty meetings. Oh, wait a minute. Faculty meetings, I don't have six spoons. Isn't enough. So you're planning out your day and your energy. There's a catch, though. There are several catches. One is that we try to fight it. We try to fight having to deal with these spoons and say, I don't care how many spoons I have, I'm going to just work and push myself because guess what? A lot of the times we can push ourselves and we can do it very successfully. Right? Can't we fake it for a while and push ourselves really hard? Something happens with that. I need a couple volunteers. Sandy's going to be one. I need one volunteer here to demonstrate something. Yeah, come on up. I need somebody who's willing. Oh, you would be excellent, I bet. Okay, stop right there. No, come over the cord so you don't trip. You have one job. Your job is to walk forward in a straight line. You're the immutable force. That's why I said you could be a little feisty. Your job is to walk in a straight line. That's the only job you have. Don't let him stop you in any way, shape, or form. Your job is to keep her from walking. Okay? You can start off wherever you want. Where do you want to start? No. Okay, go. You have one job, is to keep her from moving.
I'm not brave enough to try jumping.
Yeah, don't injure anybody, please. Do you feel any resistance, either of you?
I'm tired.
Okay.
No.
Back up. Okay, imagine that goes on for quite a while. It uses a lot of energy, right? We're trading places. You can have a seat.
It's not fair.
I'm going to stop you, okay? During this portion of the presentation, you would see me walking alongside Sandy from one point up until we get to a wall.
You're gonna hit the wall.
Why waste our time fighting our illness? Finding ways to work with the illness. If we fight, we're using up all that energy for fighting the illness. Yes, there are times when I'm going to need to push through. You can have a seat if you want. There are times when we need to push ourselves, but when we do, we're using more energy. We can guess how many spoons we have. We look in here and we might find that we wake up in the morning and we think we have a dozen spoons, but then we pick them up and they bend. And we collapse. We think we had enough to make it through the day. Other times we think we have enough and they snap. We also have this problem where we can plan it out. And like I said, this friend comes along. We think it's going to be helpful, but ends up asking us all types of favors, asking us to do things, and steals the spoons. And we can see them stealing the spoons, and we can plan for that a little bit, right? If we know there's somebody stealing the spoons. We can also plan out our week so that I'll be ready for the conference. Take a lot of breaks and gather up the spoons, and then we get ready in that morning, and we get ready to go down and present for our session, and we look, and there's only 2 spoons in our drawer when we thought there should have been 20 by this point, because we worked so hard. There are these little thieves of our energy at times that are very unpredictable, and that's one of the limits of the spoon theory. She doesn't mention those silver thieves. The first step is to accept that the thieves of our energy are real. There's biological explanations. There are human explanations. Perhaps an employer that doesn't quite understand, and that can be very draining on us. Those are realities. Sometimes it's worth it to get into a fight with them, and it uses up energy. Other times, something we might not normally have done to go along with this boss's crazy idea or this colleague's crazy idea, we might need to go along with that and accept it for what it is, because for us, we need to devote our times to other things, our energy. And so we have this great unpredictability with PSC. But if we're also trying to fight it instead of working with it, we're using energy on something that we don't need to use. Now, finding ways to work with it is pretty challenging. The first step is to accept that one of the things that keeps us from accepting the realities of our limitations is that there is this notion, and it's particularly prevalent in Western civilization, in the U.S., probably more so than many, many other countries, is this idea that we're supposed to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. We're supposed to keep going. And if we accept limitations, that we're in some way giving in. And I don't believe we need to give in to anything. We work with it, not give in. Acceptance does not equal giving in. Instead, accepting is accepting the reality for what it is today, not what it should have been, not what it was yesterday, not saying, well, if I wouldn't have wasted my energy on this yesterday, if I wouldn't have stayed up till 2 a.m. working on the website, I would have been able to finish this part of the handout or write this article. It doesn't matter. That was yesterday. Today is what it is. Focusing on, maybe I shouldn't have been smoking the past 15 years. If you've been a smoker for 15 years, you can't change that. That doesn't mean you give in to it and say, now I've ruined my life and my life is over, I might as well give up, I am a worthless human being because I've destroyed my life. No. I'm starting from day one. Right now is day one. And move forward. You accept what is, and you take responsibility for what you can do to work with what you have in the moment. Another part of acceptance is choosing to tolerate. You are going to have days where you feel like crap. You're going to have days when you feel great. When you feel lousy, the choice is not to fight that and convince yourself you feel better, because then you end up feeling worse and feeling guilty for feeling like I shouldn't feel this way. Instead, focus on skills that you can learn to tolerate whatever symptoms you have. Acceptance also means that you have to repeatedly, over and over and over and over and over, commit to accepting reality for what it is today. Now, I've said this several times, accepting reality, accepting limitations, accepting all this. One of the things about acceptance that makes it so powerful is that when we accept reality, the negatives of reality, we allow ourselves to accept when things are going well. When we fight with every ounce of our energy to keep ourselves going and say, I am not a person that is going to stop working. I am not a person who is going to give in to my illness and take a 2-hour nap. I was told I was only supposed to take 15 to 20-minute naps. I'm not going to take a 2-hour nap. I'm not going to give in that way. And we fight that and fight that. Well, guess what? You can fight it, but you also lose out on the opportunity to accept the positives that may be if you took a 15-minute nap 2.5 hours ago. If you take a 3-hour nap, you may be able to accept that you have 3 good days instead of 2.5 good days. Also, you're able to recognize the little positives that are around us. Every single day, there are things that make life worth living. It's hard to believe on some of those days, but they're there. If you look at the veins of a leaf, Dr. Sood talked about some of this. Look at the beauty and intricacy of some stuff. Even if you look at the stupidity of some people. I don't mean that literally, their stupidity, but if you see how irrational people can be, you can actually wonder in it. And wow, this is absolutely amazing how varied people's lives can be. And how differently people can think about problems than I think. This is incredible that the mind can work in so many different ways, or that whatever you like, maybe if you're looking at somebody's face, you know, the subtle ways people express different emotions. It's extremely powerful how pain shows up on different people's faces and how it responds when you greet it with a smile instead of greeting it with misery. But you have to try that again and again. You never get to acceptance. You only practice it. It's also shifting away from willfulness to willingness. I think that's what I did with Sandy here. I just went with her. I knew she would get to the wall. Eventually you're going to run out of energy. Letting go of blame and judgment. This is a big one. It's very, very easy to focus our energies on saying, well, that stupid doctor, if they had only noticed such and such, or if that SOB would have recognized that I had this complaint, or if they would listen to me for this, or if I had only admitted to myself years ago that I wasn't feeling well, I would have gotten better care and all of this. Well, that's irrelevant. If you blame, no matter who it is, you take away the opportunity to accept responsibility and to hold other people responsible. You can't change the past. You can learn from it, but blame, the only result of blame is to feel bitter. You feel bitter towards yourself. For instance, one of the things that can happen with PSC for some people is changes in your sexual functioning. Well, that's something in our culture we're not very comfortable talking about sometimes. And if you're a man, you might think, this is something wrong with me. I'm not that interested in sex anymore. Well, that's not something that is masculine. I'm not going to admit to my partner that I'm not interested in sex anymore. Or I'm not going to mention that to anybody. I'm just going to say that's because she pisses me off, or he pisses me off. You start to blame the other person, or you start to blame yourself. I'm not a good enough man if I can't get an erection. You spend all that time instead of finding out, you know what? There are a lot of other ways to have close, intimate relationships besides having an erection or having intercourse. There are very rich, fulfilling ways to enjoy each other's bodies without having intercourse. It can be a passionate exploration of a relationship that is much richer and can be transformative. And it may completely have nothing to do with sex. And as a result of accepting that, you may find your sexual functioning is better. And so letting go of self-blame is a huge part of coping and living with illness and making your life more than it. So again, this goal is to be more than your PSC. And I said this is most important perhaps for caregivers. And I said all this. One of the things that happens, especially with caregivers, is this idea that I have to do everything for this person. And I have to make sure they're healthy. And they start to sacrifice themselves to a great deal. And at the same time, we're encouraging the person with the illness to accept help and to ask for help, because it does help the helper. There's a little sidebar on my little handout. Who does helping actually help? It helps the helper probably more than it does the helpee. At the same time, no matter what you're dealing with, whether it's illness, whether it's a job, whether it's singing, whether it is public speaking, if your life is defined, your self-definition is defined by only a few things, you're vulnerable to losing that source of self. You're vulnerable to losing that source of satisfaction in your life. At any moment, health could go downhill. At any moment, somebody may be in an auto collision. If I was still singing opera, at any moment I could get a vocal node. I had a swelling from a flu that knocked my voice out for several months one time. Meant I didn't perform too well at a regional competition. I'd done phenomenally well at this district level competition, and as a result was able to do all these coachings at Lyric Opera of Chicago and just got fabulous feedback. I even went to New York and got a few coachings and lessons with some teachers at the Metropolitan Opera, and it was wonderful. And then I got this virus, this flu or whatever it was, that left me without a voice, and I thought I had recovered, but in actuality everything in there was swollen. And so I didn't sing too well on the regional competition. So all that preparation didn't pan out. If that was my only self-definition, I would have been devastated. But your life is more. So a caregiver, if you're going to be a good caregiver, you have to make sure you take time to ask somebody else to fill in if somebody needs a lot of care, and step outside of the house, go play bridge. Make sure you're continuing to work, or if you're not able to work, do something else where your life is not just that other person. And that's true regardless of whether somebody's ill. Self-definition needs to be about have multiple sources. With PSC, again, some of the things that make you most vulnerable when you make this central as your self-definition as an illness is that it's unpredictable and, for the most part, uncontrollable. So what is in your control? One is your daily self-care. That can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes we're taught that we shouldn't focus on ourselves. In fact, some people believe quite literally that spending too much time caring about yourself, taking care of yourself, is sinful. My personal opinion is that it's a balance. Yes, we need to attend to our families. We need to attend to those around us. But we also need to do some basic self-care. For instance, I know that I have trouble remembering to take my medications. Simple thing I changed probably about 8 months ago. No, 10 months ago. Is I started setting an alarm. So I have a little voice. It was actually on my old phone. I haven't transferred it to this one. But a little voice that comes on. Remember to take your morning medicine. Remember to take your morning medicine. Take your morning medicine. Take your morning medicine. Remember to take your morning medicine. Remember to take your Forteo. Take your Forteo. It's self-care. It also provides great humor because my family laughs every time they see it. And my 9-year-old will carry my phone to me saying, "Take your Forteo, take your Forteo, take your Forteo." Self-care is a lot of things. One of the things we tend to neglect when, especially in late stages of cirrhosis, this is extremely common, is basic self-care like showering, getting dressed. You would be amazed. It does cost energy. If you have the energy, you would be amazed at how differently you feel if you regularly shower. It's hard to make yourself do sometimes. Now, some of you might think that sounds completely foreign. Well, I have no problem showering, whether it's once a week, whether it's twice a day, whatever it is. But when fatigue is to a certain level, that is a very real concern. Getting dressed. I don't have to get dressed. I can keep my pajamas on all day most days. I have to take my daughter to school when I'm feeling up to it. But otherwise, why do I need to get dressed? I do that because It tells me I'm approaching today. Very often, I get dressed, I take my daughter to school, I come home, and I go lie down on the couch and sleep. And then I get up and prepare lunch. But it's a very different psychological feeling to know I'm getting ready for my day. I'm approaching my day as opposed to just kind of going along with it. Another thing in your control is how you partner with your healthcare team. And you say, no, it's not in my control. My healthcare team is obnoxious. And that can be very true in some regions in the country where you have very limited access, or some countries where you have limited control over who your healthcare providers are. But something that is in your control, how you interact with them. They can be absolute jerks, or they can be wonderful. I have wonderful providers. But they can be absolute jerks. And if we respond in kind, one of the things that happens, sometimes we get our needs met, but we might devastate the relationship long term. It can be very satisfying to tell off your doctor and to assert your needs extremely strongly. The cost is you might lose them as a reliable source of information and as an ally. If you know they're never going to be an ally, make your point. Piss them off. It's okay. If you need them as an ally, then you're going to have to focus more on effectiveness. And there's some skills in the handout on how to be effective and assertive when you feel lousy. Focus on managing how they perceive you. Recognize that your objective is important and the relationship, if you want that relationship. If somebody calls you who's trying to sell you a product on the phone, do you care about the relationship? No. So you can hang up on them. Your doctor calls who constantly pisses you off, but who is the best endoscopist in the world. They call, and they're kind of mean to you on the phone. Actually, they probably wouldn't call personally in that case. But if they were rude to you on the phone, but you knew this is the first person you went to, and when you had an ERCP you didn't get pancreatitis, you will placate them. You will be nice to them because that's effective. You will get your ERCPs done by who you want. But it has to be a choice. So choosing what to focus on. Do I focus more on the relationship? Do I focus more on self-respect? Telling people off can be a way to use your self-respect. Those are always in balance. If you just say, this shouldn't happen to me, well, that might be true, but if there's no other possible healthcare providers in your area, you need to focus on what's going to work. And partnering with your healthcare team is very important. Demands versus priorities. I would argue there is nothing you need to do. Everybody says, I have to do this, I have to do this. I would argue there's one thing you have to do in this life. Do you know what that is? You have to die. That is the only thing you have to do. That is a good line, and it's not. No, it isn't. It's only true if you want to stay out of. It's like I don't have to respect any law whatsoever if I want my freedom. Yeah, I'm taking it to an extreme, but it's real. I don't have to be nice to my wife. I can be absolutely horrible to her. I can be cruel to her. I am not, because I love that relationship, and I want that relationship. I want her in my life. I don't have to eat. Did I say I don't have to eat? I want to because I want to live. There's nothing in life we have to do. We do it because it meets some higher need. Now, we get to the point where we've built ourselves up to a certain standard of living, and we want to maintain that, and we get to a point where we don't even recognize that we originally chose that. The reality is we don't have to do that, and you do it because you want to. you will sacrifice a great deal more energy and push yourself, and your spoons, no matter how flexible they might be, you will find a way to care for them so that you can still eat with them. Even the cheap plastic, you will take the remnants of them and are able to keep yourself going when it's because you want to continue to work. That's my choice. I chose not to continue that. But if you want to, you're going to be able to tolerate it and feel good about who you are, much more so than if you convince yourself, I have to do this. Ricky has this long list of things she has to get done in order for the conference to happen. But that's only if she wants it to happen in a certain way, if she wants to provide a certain type of service to you. Now, we get caught in that catch-22 is when we've made that commitment a long time ago. We can let people down. I'm not encouraging that. But when we recognize that, yes, you can let people down, it's just that we choose not to. We have much more energy for those things that we want to do than the things we have to do. Finding pleasant activities. Okay, this sounds corny. Do something you like to do. Do something fun. Do something that makes you feel good. Well, the reality is it works. If you fill your life with things you have to do, then everything is going to be perceived as something you have to do. I have a whole bunch of other things that I could talk about, and I have lots more slides, but I really want to hear